Have you ever found yourself in a relationship where the person you once loved now feels like a stranger? Or worse, have you felt trapped with someone who seems to bring you nothing but frustration and disappointment? As time goes on, the love you once shared can start to fade, and what remains may be a constant, gnawing sense of resentment. If you've ever wondered how marriages can grow cold, or how deeply rooted issues, whether emotional, physical, or even financial, can slowly tear apart what seemed like a solid connection, then this video is for you. In today's video, we'll dive into the stories of 3 American women who are struggling with these very challenges. These women, each facing their own personal battles, share their emotional journeys of how their marriages have changed over the years. Whether it's dealing with a partner's unhealthy habits, uncovering a painful affair, or feeling overwhelmed by a lack of ambition and responsibility, these stories are raw and real. Over time, the weight of neglect, betrayal, and unmet needs has become too much for each of them to bear, leaving them questioning everything they once believed about love and commitment. Through these stories, we will uncover the silent toll that emotional exhaustion takes on both mental and physical health. These women have fought battles inside themselves that they were too afraid to voice, and their struggles reflect the painful truths that many of us face in our relationships. As we walk through their emotional journeys, we'll explore why it's so important to recognize when your relationship is no longer nurturing you, and how you can take steps to reclaim your peace and happiness. By the end of this video, you'll not only have a deeper understanding of the harsh truths that lie beneath loveless marriages, but you'll also gain insight into how to navigate the complex emotions that come with them. These are real stories, deeply relatable, and they may just resonate with something in your own life. If you haven't already, I encourage you to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Your support means so much to me, and if you found value in this video, please like it and share it with anyone who might benefit from these lessons. Let's get started. 1. Changes in husbands' behavior or habits. Over time, many women notice shifts in their husband's behavior or habits that gradually begin to chip away at the foundation of their relationship. In some cases, a husband may develop habits that were once overlooked but now become a source of constant frustration. For instance, excessive smoking, once a minor issue, can spiral into a full-blown problem that permeates the home. Not only does the smell of smoke linger in the house, but it can also affect the health of both partners. The frustration can grow as the wife feels ignored or disrespected when her pleas to quit smoking go unheard. It's not just the cigarettes, though. Perhaps the husband has stopped caring about keeping his surroundings clean, leaving clutter and mess around the house. He may neglect his health, avoid necessary doctor visits, or not pay attention to his physical well-being. These behaviors, while seemingly small at first, can accumulate over time, leaving the wife to pick up the pieces. The daily grind of living with someone whose habits are becoming increasingly unhealthy or inconsiderate can wear down even the strongest bonds. At first, a woman might feel like it's a minor inconvenience, but as these habits persist, they begin to feel like an invisible wall that divides the couple. She starts to wonder if her husband even notices or cares how his actions are affecting her. The once loving and supportive partner has turned into someone whose behavior feels more like a burden than a blessing, creating a silent resentment that is hard to ignore. For many women, this sense of irritation becomes a daily struggle, and it can lead to deep dissatisfaction in the marriage. The habits that were once part of the man she married have now transformed into irritants that chip away at the relationship, making her question whether this is the life she imagined for herself. These small changes over time become the invisible forces that threaten to undo the closeness and intimacy that once defined the relationship. 2. Unequal responsibility sharing. One of the most common sources of tension in marriages, especially as time goes on, is the unequal sharing of responsibilities. Many women, particularly those who are managing households and raising children, find themselves shouldering the majority of family duties without any significant help from their husbands. Whether it's caring for young children, supporting grown-up children, or even looking after grandchildren, the weight of responsibility often falls disproportionately on the wife. This can lead to feelings of frustration and resentment, as she feels that her husband is either unwilling or unable to contribute equally. Take, for example, Sarah, a mother of 2 teenagers and a grandmother of 3. For years, she has been the primary caregiver in her household, handling the daily routines of getting the kids off to school, managing homework, cooking meals, and dealing with the needs of her aging parents. Her husband, on the other hand, spends his evenings glued to the television or out with friends, seemingly unaware of the pressures Sarah is under. As she continues to bear the brunt of the family responsibilities, her frustration grows. The lack of support from her husband makes her feel invisible, as if her contributions are taken for granted. Worse yet, it erodes her sense of respect for him. Over time, the disparity in responsibility sharing creates a gap between them. She begins to feel as though she is carrying the entire family on her shoulders while he remains detached, oblivious to the emotional toll it's taking on her. This imbalance doesn't just create frustration, it can cause deep emotional exhaustion. Sarah starts to question whether her husband truly understands what it means to be a partner in a marriage. She begins to feel alone, even when they are physically together. As the unequal division of labor continues, the emotional bond between them begins to fray, and the respect that once existed starts to diminish. This scenario is not unique. Many women find themselves in similar situations, struggling to balance family life, work, and personal needs, all while feeling unsupported and unappreciated by their spouses. Over time, this unequal sharing of responsibilities can cause cracks in the foundation of the marriage, and the resentment that builds becomes harder to ignore. 3. Decline in health and fitness. As we age, health often takes a natural decline, and new challenges arise that we can't ignore. For many couples, the physical changes that come with aging can be hard to accept, especially when those changes directly affect their relationship. This is particularly true when one partner's health deteriorates due to lifestyle choices, such as smoking. What might have been a small issue in the past can now become a major source of stress for the couple. Take the example of Linda and Tom, who have been married for over 30 years. When they first met, they were both active, enjoyed outdoor activities, and maintained good physical health. But over the years, Tom's smoking habit has worsened, and along with it, his health has begun to deteriorate. The once active man who could keep up with Linda on hikes and long walks now spends most of his time sitting in front of the TV, coughing and struggling to catch his breath. As his health declines, Linda is left to pick up the slack in the relationship, which puts an emotional and physical strain on her. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. One of the most noticeable changes has been Tom's loud, persistent snoring, which has become unbearable. His snoring is so severe that it disrupts Linda's sleep night after night. She's tried everything: earplugs, moving to another room, and even suggesting he see a doctor about his breathing problems, but nothing has helped. The lack of sleep is taking its toll on her energy levels, mood, and overall well-being. Instead of the restful nights she used to cherish, Linda now spends her nights tossing and turning, trying to escape the sound of Tom snoring. The impact of Tom's declining health goes beyond just his snoring. The physical strain from his smoking-related illnesses is now evident in their day-to-day life. Linda worries about the future. She's afraid that Tom's health problems could worsen, and the burden of caregiving will eventually fall on her. This fear amplifies her anxiety and stress, making it even harder to cope with the relationship's increasing strain. As his physical health declines, their emotional connection starts to fray. Linda feels less like a partner and more like a caretaker, with little support from Tom in terms of his health or his efforts to improve their relationship. For many couples, this decline in health and fitness becomes a major source of tension. As one partner faces the consequences of unhealthy habits, the other may feel burdened by the responsibility of maintaining the household, managing finances, and dealing with the emotional weight of a sick spouse. The love and companionship that once defined their relationship can slowly erode as they struggle to cope with the reality of aging and illness. What was once a partnership based on shared joy and mutual support becomes a situation of one-sided care and frustration. 4. Feeling ignored. One of the most painful emotions a woman can experience in a marriage is the feeling of being ignored or neglected by her husband. Over time, when a woman feels that her partner no longer cares about her or takes an interest in her life, it can lead to deep loneliness and a sense of abandonment. This emotional distance often becomes apparent when the communication once shared between the couple begins to dwindle, leaving the woman with a feeling of isolation in a relationship that should be a source of support and companionship. Take the story of Emily and Dave. For years, they had been the picture of a happy couple, laughing together, sharing their dreams, and building a life filled with mutual respect and love. But in recent years, Emily has noticed a significant change in Dave. He no longer asks about her day, shows interest in her hobbies, or offers a simple word of encouragement. Instead, he is often preoccupied with his concerns, whether it's work, sports, or his phone, and seems oblivious to the fact that Emily is struggling to hold things together on her own. This lack of emotional connection is especially painful when it comes to household responsibilities. Emily finds herself taking care of everything: the laundry, cooking, cleaning, and even managing their finances, while Dave remains largely disengaged. When she asks him to pitch in, he either brushes it off or offers a half-hearted attempt that doesn't meet her expectations. The result? Emily feels exhausted, emotionally drained, and unsupported. The weight of the household chores falls on her shoulders alone, and the more she tries to ask for help, the more it seems like her needs are ignored. This feeling of being ignored is compounded by the emotional toll of feeling unimportant. Emily starts to question whether Dave even notices her sacrifices, let alone appreciates them. She finds herself longing for the days when their conversations were meaningful and their time together was filled with genuine connection. Now, she's left to carry the load in silence, unable to share her struggles with the very person who should be her life partner. Over time, the loneliness becomes overwhelming. Emily feels as though she's living with a stranger in her own home, someone who may physically be there, but emotionally and mentally is somewhere else entirely. The emotional neglect she experiences chips away at her self-esteem, making her wonder if she's still valued in her marriage. The constant sense of being taken for granted erodes the love and affection that once bound them together, leaving her questioning if this is the life she had envisioned. For many women, this emotional isolation is a silent killer in their relationships. The absence of support, the lack of empathy, and the feeling of being invisible can all contribute to an overwhelming sense of emptiness. When one partner feels like they are no longer seen or heard, it creates a rift that is hard to bridge. What was once a partnership filled with shared experiences and mutual care becomes a marriage of convenience, leaving both partners, especially the woman, feeling emotionally abandoned. 5. Change in views on life and marriage. When people are young, they often approach love and marriage with an idealistic view, full of dreams and optimism. The notion of finding a partner to share a life of happiness, adventures, and mutual support feels like a promise that's always within reach. But as the years go by and life takes its toll, the reality of marriage starts to settle in, often shaped by the practical challenges that come with aging, illness, and changing priorities. Take the example of Carol and Jack, who were once the epitome of a joyful, carefree couple. When they first married in their 20s, they shared grand dreams of travel, building a home, and spending their golden years together in a peaceful, idyllic way. They often talked about how their love would grow stronger with age, how they'd support each other through thick and thin, and how they'd enjoy their later years surrounded by love and laughter. However, as they entered their 60s, their relationship started to feel more like a series of compromises than a partnership filled with mutual joy. For Carol, the early years of their marriage were full of excitement. Jack was ambitious, caring, and always ready for the next adventure. But as time went on, life's responsibilities began to weigh heavily on both of them. They started to spend more time taking care of their grandchildren, handling family obligations, and dealing with the increasing health problems that came with aging. Instead of their romantic getaways and long conversations about the future, they found themselves dealing with day-to-day struggles, from financial worries to the challenges of managing their health. Carol began to feel like the freshness of their relationship had faded. Jack, once full of energy and ideas, was now more sedentary, often complaining about aches and pains, and focused on his own declining health. They spent less time talking about their hopes and dreams and more time discussing who would take the next trip to the doctor or how they would manage the house repairs. This shift in their dynamic caused Carol to question her expectations of marriage. The picture of growing old together with joy and passion was now clouded by the responsibilities of aging, both her own and Jack's. The vibrancy of their earlier years together seemed like a distant memory, replaced by a quiet resignation. Carol found herself feeling more like a caretaker than a partner, and Jack, despite being physically present, had become emotionally distant. For many couples, this change in perspective is a natural part of growing older. The expectations of a happy, carefree marriage often collide with the realities of age-related challenges. Both men and women can start to feel disillusioned as the sparkle of their early relationship fades, leaving them to navigate the practicalities of life. The demands of caregiving, managing finances, and facing illness can make the once optimistic view of marriage feel out of reach. As the years pass, some people, like Carol and Jack, begin to lose hope in the possibility of rediscovering the passion they once shared. Instead, they settle into a quieter, more functional version of marriage, where emotional intimacy takes a back seat to survival and routine. This shift isn't necessarily a reflection of failure, but it can be a difficult adjustment. What once felt like an exciting journey filled with possibilities now feels like a comfortable, but often unsatisfying, routine. The vibrant connection that once defined the marriage may give way to a sense of acceptance, but for many, the longing for something more remains, a desire for the love, energy, and excitement that they once believed would carry them through old age together. 6. Physiological dissatisfaction. As couples age, they inevitably face the physiological changes that come with growing older, and for many, these changes can lead to unexpected challenges in their relationships. One area where these changes are often most noticeable is in sexual intimacy. Middle-aged men, in particular, may experience a decline in their sexual health, such as erectile dysfunction, lower libido, or other physical issues that can create a gap between what they desire and what they are physically able to provide. This decline can lead to a deep sense of frustration for both partners, particularly when the wife, who may still be in the prime of her sexual desire, feels that her needs are not being met. Consider the story of Michelle and Greg, a couple in their mid-40s who have been married for nearly 20 years. In the early years of their marriage, their sexual connection was a central part of their bond. Michelle remembers the passionate nights and the closeness that came with their physical intimacy. But over the years, Greg's health began to decline. Stress at work, his lack of exercise, and the natural aging process all took a toll on his body, leading to a noticeable decrease in his sexual drive. At first, Michelle thought it was just a temporary phase, but as the months turned into years, the problem persisted, and Greg seemed uninterested in finding a solution. Meanwhile, Michelle found herself experiencing an increase in her sexual desire. In her 30s, she felt more confident and vibrant, and her sexual energy was at its peak. She longed to share that part of herself with Greg, but the physical intimacy they once enjoyed was now replaced with frustration. Greg's indifference to her needs left her feeling rejected and disconnected. She tried to be understanding, telling herself that he was just going through a phase, but as time passed, the emotional and physical distance between them grew wider. This sexual dissatisfaction began to take a toll on Michelle's self-esteem. She started to question whether she was still attractive to Greg or if he simply didn't care about her needs anymore. The frustration built over time, and Michelle found herself wondering if their marriage could survive without the physical connection that had once been so important to them both. She began to feel resentful, thinking about how she had given so much of herself to the marriage, but her needs remained unmet. As this dissatisfaction lingered, Michelle considered whether it was time to end the marriage. She wasn't sure if it was the lack of sexual intimacy that was the problem, or if it was the emotional disconnect that had come with it. But what was clear was that the longer the issue went unaddressed, the more it eroded the foundation of their relationship. The physical and emotional frustrations became harder to ignore, and Michelle felt herself slipping away from the woman she once was, lost in a marriage that no longer seemed to fulfill her needs. This is a reality that many couples face as they grow older. When sexual intimacy becomes imbalanced due to physiological changes, it can lead to a deeper dissatisfaction that goes beyond the bedroom. For many women, the unmet need for physical closeness can bring feelings of rejection, loneliness, and frustration, which, if not addressed, can eventually lead to questioning the future of the marriage itself. The emotional toll of feeling disconnected in such an intimate part of life can leave both partners wondering if they can ever rediscover the passion that once brought them together. 7. Comparative thinking. As time passes in a marriage, many women begin to compare their husbands to other men, often without realizing they are doing so. These comparisons can stem from feelings of disappointment or frustration when they perceive a shift in how their husbands treat them, especially after the honeymoon phase fades. In the early days of their relationship, everything felt new and exciting. Their husbands showered them with attention, affection, and thoughtfulness. But as the years go by and life becomes more routine, women may start to notice a change. The little gestures of love and care that once came so easily now seem rare, and the dynamic of their relationship shifts. This often leads to the uncomfortable habit of comparing their husbands to other men, especially those who seem to be more attentive, more affectionate, or more involved in family life. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Take the story of Jennifer and Mike, who have been married for 15 years. In the early years, Mike was attentive and thoughtful, and made Jennifer feel special. He would surprise her with flowers, listen intently when she spoke, and always put her needs above his own. But now, Jennifer feels like those gestures have become less frequent, and she's often left wondering if Mike even notices her anymore. At social gatherings with friends, she observes how some husbands are actively engaged with their wives, helping out with chores, participating in conversations, or planning special dates, and she starts to feel a pang of envy. She begins to ask herself, why don't I get that kind of attention? Why is Mike not like that anymore? Jennifer's doubts begin to creep in. She wonders if Mike's love for her has faded over time. She starts questioning whether he still sees her as the woman he married, or if she's become just another part of the daily routine. The comparisons, though subtle at first, grow stronger as Jennifer notices how other husbands seem to manage their family responsibilities with ease and offer more emotional support. She begins to feel like Mike is falling short in comparison, and she wonders why he can't seem to do the same things other men do for their wives. This habit of comparing husbands to others can leave a woman feeling undervalued and emotionally neglected. The more she compares her relationship to others, the more she may feel like her own marriage doesn't measure up. It's not that she doesn't love her husband anymore. It's more that the excitement and connection they once shared seem to have faded into the background of everyday life. The emotional intimacy that once defined their bond feels distant, and Jennifer starts to wonder if that intimacy can ever be revived. For many women, this comparative thinking can become a source of frustration. It doesn't necessarily mean that their husbands are bad partners. It's often a reflection of unmet emotional needs. The love they shared in the early years may have been easy, but as life's responsibilities pile up, maintaining that level of attention and affection becomes harder. Yet, when women see others experiencing something they long for in their marriages, the comparison can amplify feelings of dissatisfaction. This comparison can make them feel as though their husband's attention has shifted elsewhere, and the bond they once had is slipping away. 8. Deterioration of husband's appearance and sloppy behavior after marriage. When we first fall in love, we often focus on the qualities that make our partner special, whether it's their physical attractiveness, the way they carry themselves, or their energy and enthusiasm for life. But over time, marriage can sometimes diminish the initial spark, especially if one partner begins to let their appearance and habits slip. This is particularly true when a partner starts to neglect their health and well-being, which can significantly impact their physical appearance and the dynamic of the relationship. Take the story of Jessica and Dan. When they met, Dan was the picture of vitality. Fit, well-groomed, and always dressed to impress. But as the years passed and they settled into married life, Jessica began to notice changes in him that she hadn't expected. He started drinking more frequently, indulging in unhealthy eating habits, and gradually stopped exercising. Slowly but surely, the man she had fallen in love with started to change. The athletic, trim figure she once admired had been replaced by extra weight and a more disheveled appearance. His hairline began to recede, and his once polished style was replaced by unkempt clothes and a general disregard for personal grooming. Jessica began to feel less attracted to him, and the physical changes weren't the only issue. His unhealthy habits, particularly smoking, became a significant source of frustration. Despite Jessica's repeated pleas for him to quit, Dan continued to smoke, and his bad habits only seemed to worsen. She learned that secondhand smoke is often more harmful than smoking directly, and the more she understood the dangers, the deeper her resentment grew. The smell of his cigarette smoke had become unbearable. His breath, once sweet and fresh, now reeked of stale tobacco, making it nearly impossible for Jessica to be close to him. His yellowed teeth, despite his occasional brushing, only added to her disgust. The man she once adored now felt like a stranger to her. Every time he spoke to her, the foul odor of his breath would assault her senses, making her feel nauseous and repulsed. It was as though the man she loved was slowly being overtaken by the neglect of his health and of their marriage. But the frustrations didn't stop there. Over time, Dan's snoring became another unbearable issue. It started quietly, but soon his snoring was so loud that it sounded like thunder every night. Jessica tried to address the problem by suggesting he sleep in the living room so she could get some rest, but Dan refused, insisting that the bedroom was too comfortable for him to move. Despite Jessica's attempts to avoid the situation, she reluctantly moved to the living room herself, only for Dan to pull her back, not wanting to sleep alone. If she persisted, he would shout and disturb the entire house, making it impossible for Jessica to escape the situation without causing further conflict. Ultimately, she gave in and returned to the bedroom, enduring another sleepless night. The constant cycle of sleeplessness, coupled with the unbearable combination of cigarette smoke and loud snoring, was taking a severe toll on Jessica's mental and physical health. Every day felt like a struggle, as she grew increasingly exhausted, and her anger toward Dan only deepened. She felt as if he was entirely indifferent to her needs, focused only on his comfort. The man who had once made an effort to maintain his appearance and engage with her emotionally was now a stranger who could not even take the basic steps to care for himself or her. Jessica found herself reminding Dan to take a shower, brush his teeth, or wash his hair. Simple things that she once took for granted in their marriage. Yet, every time, he would ignore her unless she specifically asked him. If she didn't remind him, he would go to bed without even washing his feet or brushing his teeth, leaving behind an unpleasant body odor that clung to the sheets. Every day, she had to wash the sheets and covers to remove the smell, which felt mentally exhausting. It wasn't just the physical chores that weighed on her. It was the emotional pressure of feeling like she was taking on the role of his caretaker instead of his partner. This lack of self-discipline and the disregard for basic hygiene became a source of daily stress for Jessica. What was once a fulfilling and passionate relationship had turned into a burdensome routine, where she felt more like a mother figure than a wife. She found herself questioning how much longer she could endure living in a marriage where she felt so neglected and repulsed by the very person she once adored. The emotional and physical toll of dealing with Dan's deterioration weighed heavily on her, and the once vibrant connection they shared seemed to slip further and further away. Many of my friends, women around my age, have confided in me that they are facing similar challenges in their marriages. When we get together, the conversations inevitably turn to how their husbands have become more careless and distant as they age. They talk about how their husbands have become less considerate, less attentive, and less involved in the home and family life. We share our frustrations, and though it doesn't solve anything, there is some comfort in knowing I'm not alone in feeling this way. At least I'm not the only one going through this struggle. When I was younger, I had always believed that I would love my husband forever, that we would grow old together and enjoy the years ahead in each other's company. I imagined our later years filled with peace, shared memories, and continued affection. But now, as each day passes, my feelings have changed. I find myself resenting him more with each passing day. The love I once felt has turned into something cold and distant. I dread seeing his face, hearing his voice. I don't know if I've changed, or if it's him, but what I do know is that my life feels increasingly heavy, and every day seems like an endless struggle. Take the story of Rebecca and her husband Steve. She is 40 years old, considered middle-aged for women, and has been married to Steve for over 15 years. From the outside, they appeared to be the perfect couple, a long-married pair that others admired. In the early years, their love was deep, and they treated each other with kindness and affection. Steve was always thoughtful and attentive, constantly showing Rebecca he cared, whether it was with small gestures or his words. They had a genuine connection, laughing together, sharing conversations, and building a life filled with joy. Rebecca thought she had made the right choice in choosing Steve, and she was certain that their love would endure forever. However, as the years went on, things began to change. Rebecca couldn't pinpoint exactly when it happened, but slowly, Steve became more distant. He started showing signs of irritation and indifference toward her. The sweet, loving words that once flowed so easily between them started to fade, replaced by harsh tones and angry outbursts. Rebecca tried to understand what was happening, but every attempt to ask him about the change was met with excuses or, worse, frustration. It was as if she were a bother to him. The intimacy that once sparked passion between them now felt like an empty routine, a series of obligatory acts without the warmth and love that had once defined their connection. Rebecca began to feel that the man she had fallen in love with had disappeared, replaced by someone she no longer recognized. One day, out of sheer desperation, Rebecca decided to secretly check Steve's phone. She didn't want to do it. She had never imagined she'd find herself in such a situation, but she felt as if she had no other choice. And, to her devastation, she discovered that Steve had been having an affair with another woman. The shock hit her like a freight train. The person she had loved, the person she had trusted with her heart and her life, had betrayed her in the worst way possible. The betrayal shattered her world. She felt both heartbroken and enraged. The trust they had built over the years had been destroyed in an instant, and Rebecca found herself lost in a whirlwind of emotions. At first, she thought about divorce, wondered if walking away from the marriage was the only way to free herself from the pain. But then, she thought about their children, about the life they had built together, and her heart broke all over again. Should she end it all, let go of the dreams they had shared, and start over? Or should she stay, endure the agony for the sake of her family, and try to salvage